So hi, welcome to the Noise Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm Glory.
And we're here with...
My name is Lucas. I'm the singer of Hold an Absence.
And we're going to have some questions to say about the upcoming album, The Noble Art of Self-Destruction. So congrats on that, by the way. How do you feel about the response to the announcement so far?
Yeah, really, really good so far. I think we're quite an album band, though, so our fans, I think, are waiting for the big day before they go crazy. So, can't wait for everybody to hear it,
Definitely an album band, because I've noticed a lot of single edits on the singles that you guys have put out because of all of the transitions and shit that are baked into this record.
Exactly.
It's a great experience.
Thank you. Yeah, that's always the goal, is to try and make the album experience kind of unique to just, I guess, listening to 10 songs and listening to an album. That should feel different, right? So yeah, but at the same time, we didn't want to give away the transitions too much before the album actually dropped,
Fair enough.
Exactly, that's fair.
And last time we spoke, I didn't realize that you guys were like in the middle of building a trilogy with your first three records. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, to be honest, when we spoke, I'm not sure that we even knew that that was the plan. But I think when we started writing the third album, it felt very much like, almost like kind of like the end of the beginning of our band's career, if that makes sense. Like the first three albums, we made sure with this album we didn't want to do anything kind of scary or anything too risky, almost, because we know what we're good at and we know our fans love that. And it was a case of almost refining our sound to the maximum now, and then kind of closing everything off, and then who knows where album 4 will take us. So yeah,
makes sense.
Interesting. Album was fucking immaculate, by the way. Just to
thank you so much. Honestly, this is, I think, my second day of doing press for the album, so I've only heard the opinions of like 5 people before these interviews. So every time someone says that, the album's good, it means a lot to me, because you're probably the 8th person to compliment it to me. So thank you very much.
Hell yeah.
Of course. So is there any meaning behind the album title or cover art?
Yeah, man. So this whole album is really, very conceptually rich. I come up with lots of through thread concepts and stuff like that. But ultimately, the album is about, overcoming hardship and trying to grow, essentially. Kintsugi, which is the Japanese art form of infusing glue with gold and repairing something to make it more valuable. That was very important to us. And as you can tell by the artwork, you can literally see the artwork has been put together basically with gold, so that was very important to us. And then, the title itself, The Noble Art of Self-Destruction, I think it was kind of this idea that, almost like self-destruction is generally viewed as a negative thing. But, the lessons that I've learned writing this album, I think, breaking is important in order to mend in a healthier, better way, almost, So that's kind of where all of that come from. But yeah, there's a lot of, I could talk for hours about it all, to be honest. There's a lot going on. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process for this album?
Yeah, so this album was the first album we'd ever done as like a full-time band. So The Greatest Mistake of My Life was written at the end of 2019, and we were still working. I was working in a local music shop, and Scott was working in a coffee shop, and we were kind of just hoping someday we would be a band that got to tour a lot. We had toured a lot, but nowhere near the extent that we've done post-COVID. So for this album, it was like, we're a full-time band now. We don't have jobs anymore. So it's like basically every moment we were home, which was not actually that much because we were touring so often, but every moment we were home, it was a case of, let's meet up, let's do 5-day weeks, let's go on little like retreats to like cottages in the middle of nowhere, and just try and find some juice from different places, I guess. But it was definitely a hard album to write because time, because like basically we toured probably 8 of the last 12 months or during that cycle. So for us to come home and then spend probably 3 months writing, and then a month recording is like, it was definitely an intense process. But I think it sounds like a mature album from a band that is doing it full time. It doesn't sound like a bunch of kids have put this album together, and I'm really proud of that, I think. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
How did you kind of keep that motivation? You know, you're touring a shit ton, and like now you have to get a record done and written, and you really have no time to stop.
It is tough, and one thing that I think is very important to note is, you know, when you do what we do, which is essentially create art, you know, nobody can force you to do that. You know, that should come naturally from your heart. So yeah, you're right. Coming home and being like, right, chop chop, we've got a month to write an album. Be inspired, be creative, be interesting. It is actually really tough. But I think that being said, you know, the gravity of what we're doing here is never lost on us. You know, we're a group of lads who grew up in a small village, and you know, we're obsessed with the local music scene basically, and obsessed with the Warped Tour music scene, and now we're fortunate enough to be touring with bands we grew up like idolizing basically. And I think, you know, when you keep trying to remind yourself of that, I think it's almost hard to fail, because you know, you realize that everything counts, everything. And if this album flops, that's it. I'm gone. You know, I'll be a guy on your Spotify for the next 10 years, and then I'll disappear forever. And you know, and it's very cutthroat sometimes, the music industry. So it is very much about being aware of how quickly this can be over, and almost how much time we've invested to get it to the point that it's at anyway, you know? So
yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely. And are you guys like not a we can write on tour band? Like, do you have to create a writing environment, go off to a cabin and kind of create that comfortable environment to write together?
yeah, brilliant question, because yes, I'd say we very much are, you know, and I think it's actually interesting because you know, the digital age has sadly trained musicians to write in a very different way. And I think, you know, you hear about your favorite bands, they would write the songs on tour in sound check, right? You know what I mean? They'd come up with a riff and they'd be like, well, you know, and they jam it out, and by the end of the tour they've written this song in sound check, you know. And I think these days, because you know, using technology and you know, computers is so much more important, I guess. I think, us included, I think a lot of musicians have kind of lost the skill of being able to write in the sound check now, you know. And then the other thing I'd say is, like, there's no way we're writing an album on a laptop on tour. That just looks like the most miserable thing to me. And I know some friends of ours that are doing that now. We're touring with them, and we'll go in and they'll have the laptop on the table and the guitar in their hands, and it's like, I just feel sorry for them, because touring should be like fun, and sometimes writing isn't fun. So it's like, it's almost like your world's colliding a little bit too much. But one thing I think is important to note is that we will come home and we will write, but a lot of our music is slow cooked, you know. It's like a lot of the ideas and the concepts and the lyrics that I come up with will happen over months and months. So it actually was quite cool for me, because we came home, we did a load of demos, and then we sat with the demos. And then the ones that sucked, you know, if they suck to us after a month, they're going to suck to everybody else after a month. So let's spin that, you know what I mean? And then also this lyric I've been toying with, I've actually now managed to kind of unlock to its full potential. So I can't wait to get home and put that down. So yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of duality to it. I very much look at it as flash frying food sometimes, and slow cooking food the other times, and trying to get all the different types of magic from different ways, I guess. So yeah,
absolutely. That makes sense. So what song off this album took the longest to write, and which one is your personal favorite?
Ooh, tough. I'm not entirely sure which one took the longest to write. You know, there's a few songs that, for example, Honeymoon, the song that we put out most recently, you know, that was a song that I wrote basically just myself and an acoustic guitar, and we'd never like translated that before. So I would actually say that probably took the longest time to actually reach its finish line, because I had an acoustic version, but you know, I had to almost like convince the rest of the band to imagine what I was imagining and make it become what it became, you know. But for me personally, though, my favorite song is a song called Her Wings, which is kind of like, I'm a diehard My Chemical Romance fan, and that's very My Chem kind of vibes, you know. And then the other one is the closing track, The Angel in the Marble, which is I think is probably my best performance as a lyricist. I think a lot of the lyrics on that song are very, very personal, and I'm really proud that it's the conclusion to our 3 album trilogy. I guess you know.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And that's very crazy to hear that Honeymoon was kind of transformed from an acoustic track, just you and acoustic guitar, to full band, because that's usually like the exact opposite of what we hear. Everyone's always like, we start with an acoustic guitar and then kind of flesh it out from there. So you guys just always jump like deep end head first with just like full like instruments and everything when you
Yeah,
write?
generally, I think it's because you want you almost want to look at like the maximum potential that a song has, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if we sat down and wrote a chorus that sounded absolutely epic straight away, there's no question that that's going to be epic. You can literally hear it on a demo, if that makes sense. Whereas with an acoustic guitar, you've really got to believe in the bones of the music, and that does take a lot more imagination. So yeah, you're right. I think some people will, like for example, like even just like Nirvana, it's like I'm sure Kurt Cobain wrote everything on an acoustic guitar and then translated it forwards, but that's something that we've never done. But that being said, hey, maybe it's something we do a lot more of an album for now that we've kind of unlocked that skill, I guess,
Absolutely.
Makes sense. So how'd the track list for the album come about? Did you guys write the opener be the opener, closer be a closer, just shuffle around and see what fits? What was that process like?
Yeah, great question, because we do that. We very much look at how we want the album to be shaped. It's hard to kind of describe lots of the things I see in my head when I'm creating things. But if you think about your favorite albums, they're almost like a bar chart. They go up and then they come down and then they slowly rise, and then sometimes they go up, down, left, and right. And I think for us, the skill of writing an album is the hardest skill. So I think, if we can say, here is the rigid structure of what we think the album should be, and then let's try and like accumulate songs to fit in those slots. I think that has actually worked for us every time we've written an album. And I think sometimes when you listen to an album from a band, you can tell they didn't have that in mind, And I never want to write and record 10 songs and then place them, because I just think there's so much that could go wrong there. And I think the experience of an album deserves a grander plan almost,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Fuck yeah. So would you be able to tell us where your headspace is at while you were creating this record?
Yeah, so I mean, this was an interesting record because the first album was about love and about a relationship, and then the second album was about kind of grief and hindsight and bit larger than life things almost. But then it dawned on me that I'd never really been too personal, or almost, because I was lost in the concepts. So the concept for this album was really big and really rich, but it was really rooted in my personal experience as a self-critical, self-deprecating person, always trying to improve. So I do feel like I reached into like ugly parts of myself a little bit with this album to try and almost pull the darker parts of me out a little bit and come to grips with them. But I think that is the point of the human experience, is to come to grips with the uglier parts of you as well as celebrating the beautiful parts of you. So for this album, there was, for me personally, a lot of introspection and a lot of I guess critical thought, but at the same time, I do really feel like it's the most candid and real album I've ever written lyrics for. So yeah.
All right.
Hell yeah.
So how do you recommend your fans to listen to this album for the first time? Should you do in the car with friends, in the dark with headphones on? Is workout album, party album? What do you personally recommend?
For me, I would say, I don't know, man. I always think walking is like a good way of just listening to an album. You know what I mean? Like maybe late at night when everything's just a little bit quiet, and the world is a little bit more kind of, yeah, I'd say, have food, or whenever you have food, put a pair of headphones in and just go for a nice hour-long walk and just take it all in, I'd say. So yeah,
All right.
definitely not a gym album though.
Yeah, no.
So this one should be super, super quick off the top of your head. I want you to describe this album for new listeners in 3 words, no more, no less.
Ooh, okay. Sorry, my dog has just turned up.
Oh my goodness. Are we able to meet them? What's up?
Yeah, Coco was good.
Hi, Coco. Dude, I'm brilliant. I love him.
Sorry. I'm dog sitting this week, and she's a clingy little thing. Okay, right. So 3 words. I would say critical. I think it's an important part of this album is that it is a critical album. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to say three words. I'm not supposed to explain the words. Okay, I'd say critical, hopeful, and personal. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
Would you like to explain them now, or you want to leave it there?
Yeah, I guess I can.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is. Yeah, the idea of this album was to be critical of self and to encourage people to be critical of themselves in a positive way, and also to embrace the parts of yourself you're almost lying to yourself about. I'd say so. That what was the other one? I said personal, which was I think I kind of explained earlier. It's like this was probably the most personal album I've done. And the other one was honest? No, what was it? Hopeful. Yes, it was. Because this album closes with a very, very hopeful crescendo. The closing lyric, I am a puzzle, I am a painting, I am a work of art in the making. It says, I'm intricate and I'm unfinished, and that is beautiful. And like at the end of the day, I think a painting can always have a little bit more work done to it if you need, right? So your story isn't finished, So yeah.
That's such a crazy fucking closing lyric, man.
Yeah.
That's so brilliant. Yeah.
So in that same train of thought, is there a certain feeling or emotion you want listeners to have while going through the album?
Not so much. I just wanted to make people think about themselves, like I think, especially when we talk about the stigma of, hey, being a man myself as well, like that's one whole nother thing. But as people, we've never been encouraged to embrace our emotions. And I think, we're coming to grips with it more as a society. But I want this to be an album that, people just like think about themselves when they listen to in a good way, like how can you be better? How can you learn to find closure? Stuff like that. So.
All right.
That fucking rocks. So are you able to talk about any particularly challenging or standout moments from the creation of this album, positive or negative?
I would say the recording process was a little bit tough because I find it's weird, but I've only recorded an album kind of like twice, really, in like an enclosed kind of experience. But I find I do get like a little bit depressed when we record music, and I don't know why that is, but I think it's almost like that culmination of all of our work put together, and almost like, I don't know, it's almost like that sick feeling you get in your stomach when you're wondering if the thing that you've spent ages trying to do actually happens almost. I can't think of a better analogy than that, but yeah, there's always that. And then I guess, coming to the end of a project and really holding the mirror up to yourself and kind of asking, am I good enough? It's in keeping with the album itself that's how I felt. But yeah, I'd say, the ups and downs of being a kind of sensitive person in a very, very kind of clinical industry, I guess, is always the hardest part. But otherwise, though, I think, I would say I'm proud of how good I think this album is, considering how natural it came to us, which is a great thing.
Hell yeah. So for this question, I want you to picture you're on tour, you're at a gas station for a rest stop. What is your snack of choice?
Yeah. Oh, so I'm vegan. So my snack of choice is very much diminished compared to most people's. And now that we've done so much US touring, I'm very aware that Love's doesn't have many vegan snacks. So there's a cookie company called Lenny and Larry's. I don't know if you guys are aware. Yeah, and I think they're all vegan. So I lived off of them for the Silverstein tour because I was just constantly munching on those. So yeah,
nice.
Hell yeah, you got a favorite flavor?
To be honest, it's normally just the white chocolate chip macadamia ones that they sell. But man, I've got the point now with being vegan where I feel like I've eaten everything. So if it's different, I'll just try it. You know what I mean? So,
Fair enough.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. So on the topic of food, if the band was a dish, what dish would the band be and why?
ooh, great question.
Thank you.
Ooh, I mean, yeah, like I said, we're vegan, so it'd have to be a vegan dish.
Mhm.
Um, ooh, I don't know. This is a toughie, man. I'm trying to think of what the core of our band is and how to translate that to the plate, I guess. I don't know why, but I think no. I'll tell you what comes straight to mind. Actually, is our drummer Ash is a brilliant chef, and basically he has this kind of signature dish, which is just like a load of vegetables, a load of beans, and a load of rice. And
Mhm.
like, I know it's kind of hard to explain, but when we record or write or whatever, and we're away as a band, we call it the Greeno Special. And it's basically just like loads of broccoli, loads of Brussels sprouts, really nicely cooked rice, and then
Mhm.
like loads of pulses and stuff. And have you ever tried nutritional yeast? Do you know what that
Yes.
is?
Yes.
Yeah. So just a whole lot of nooch on the top of that. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that, yeah. So, yeah.
Nice.
That
All
sounds fucking scrumptious.
right. So for the last couple of questions, we're going to shift completely away from music. So if you could be one animal for the rest of your life, what animal would you be and why?
I recently fell in love with squirrels. I had a moment where I was like in a park and I was looking at a squirrel and I remember thinking like they're just so like aloof, but also like agile and cool, you know, and like kind of sociable, but kind of rude at the same time. So yeah, I'll go with the squirrel, man. Yeah.
Squirrel.
Oh
Fuck yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So if you could have lunch with any celebrity or artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Whoa, yeah. It's really tough.
It's a toughie.
I think I'm gonna go with Stan Lee,
Oh,
the Marvel goat. I'm a
yeah.
massive Marvel fan, and when I was 11 years of age, my history um, homework was to write up a piece of paper about a historical figure, and
Mm.
I got an F because I did it about Stan Lee, and my teacher was like, "This he's not historical." And now, 20 years later or whatever,
Yeah,
or 15 years later, it's like there's no question that Stanley is probably one of the most important men in pop culture, and everything
absolutely.
he's created. So I'd say that, and I think more than anything, I think he always had a good philosophy and like a hunger to tell stories that related to people, and I think that's
Mhm.
what Holden Absence does really. I just try and tell stories that can relate to people.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite Marvel movie?
Oh, movie.
Mhm.
Oof. I'm trying to think. I'm very. I watch everything Marvel does because, like I said, I'm generally I'm a diehard Marvel fan. I've been reading
Yeah.
the comics since I was like 7 years of age. But I would probably say maybe Ragnarok because that was like a really refreshing kind of take on, and I loved World War Hulk, the comic that it was based on.
Mhm.
Um, so I'd go with that, or I loved Guardians 3. I thought that was a brilliant movie. So yeah, I'll
Mhm.
probably go with that as well. So yeah.
I did not expect Ragnarok. I was thinking like, oh, Winter Soldier, like one of the first like Captain Americas, but Ragnarok.
Yeah, I
Fuck.
just think it's like it's creative. I
It is,
think
yeah.
that's the thing. I think they're trying to do it a lot with the Marvel movies, and maybe they're losing themselves a little to it. I will say, but trying to make every movie different, almost as if
Mhm.
Marvel is the genre rather than
Ah.
Marvel. So every film kind of has like its own different, like Multiverse of Madness is a horror and blah blah
Yep.
blah. So I think for me personally, any film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has like a very unique identity, I
Mhm.
100% go for that one. But
Hmm.
that being said, Winter Soldier was great, and obviously Infinity War and Endgame are just goated. So
Oh my
yeah.
God. Amazing. Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah. And for this last question, boom, you're on a desert island. You can bring one movie, one album, and one person. Who and what are you bringing?
Well, I'll bring my girlfriend because she's my best friend as well. So I'm sure we
Oh.
can hang out for the rest of the time on an island. That'd be easy. A movie. Woo! I'm gonna Ponyo, the
Ponyo.
Studio Ghibli movie about a small goldfish that turns into a little girl and falls in love with a little boy, and it's just like so
Oh.
cute. I think
Yeah.
it just has this beautiful energy to it. I was gonna say Kill Bill, but then I was like, that's probably gonna get a bit tiresome after however many years. And then as far as an album goes, I would say I would normally say The Black Parade, because it's my favorite album of all time. But I think I'm going to say OK Computer just because it's like my girlfriend and mine's probably mutual favorite album. So I don't want to hog all the music, you know. So
that's very considerate. Usually people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna fucking torture my partner with this album that they actually hate." But you're like, "This is our favorite."
Yeah, man. You know, it's got to be a fun experience for everyone. All two people involved, you know.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
So as I said, that's all the questions we have today. Is there anything that you would like to plug?
Nope, just my band. We're on tour. We're doing a whole lot of shows around North America from September onwards, and hopefully we'll be doing a headline tour at some point in the future as well. So yeah, just keep your eyes on that, and I hope you enjoy the album, whoever you are. If you listen to it, hope you enjoy.
Hell yeah. All right, well, thank you for now. It's been Lucas from Holding Absence, and we have been the Good Noise Podcast.